Welcome back. Welcome back to the intro to the NeuroSefirot course, the introduction to the Kabbalistic understanding. Specifically, today we were discussing the creation of the world. In the previous sessions, we have discussed the meaning of the word Kabbalah, the meaning of what Kabbalah represents to us as humans, as a nation, as communities, as culture, as a background to every single one of who we are. And I also started discussing the term called Or Ein Sof, which means the light, or the more appropriate, I guess, translation would also be reflection of the infinity, reflection of the absolute. Today we will actually start discussing the term called Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is a term that stands for the withdrawal. And the major understanding is that at a certain moment, something happened that remember we discussed the emptiness, the infinity, the absolute, as we refer to it as the light, or Ein Sof, the light of the divine light, I like to call it. So that divine light, and we brought the allegory of the sun, occupied everything. But like I mentioned before, the reason why Earth as a planet exists for life, for us humans to live, is because it's far enough to the sun and it's close enough to the sun, close enough to get light and warmth, and far enough not to get burned. And that's the idea. If the Earth, and that's how they explain it, right? Originally, there was so much infinite light that it kind of burned everything. In order for this infinite light, in order for human life, and we consider life as human life, as what animals and humans are, by the way, part of animal world, right? In order for everything alive, including the plants, every living being, we say, or every living existence to come alive, this infinite light, which very, very, very furthest kind of understanding of this infinite light would be the sun. But that would be the closest for our human mind to comprehend to what infinite light represents. So that's the idea, that in order for this world to be able to create the life, the infinite light had to withdraw itself. It's also called living to make space, right? In human terms, it's understanding, I think as parents, most of us will understand it the best, because as parents, it's important for us to make space for our children to live on their own as they get older, especially when they become teenagers. It's a must, an important concept for us to understand as parents. We must make space for our children to live, to create, to exist on their own. But the withdrawal, of course, must be done slowly. We cannot just leave them as teenagers. We must kind of leave slowly. And that's the idea. Again, I gave you just an allegory for some of us, those of us who are parents, to understand it. There are many different philosophical discussions of what else, how else we can explain this, what other allegories can be brought. Another allegory is creating a construction site, right? In order for the building to be built, the construction site must be what? Emptied out. Everybody must withdraw. There must be an empty space, void of anything that could belong to anyone or anything. And that's the idea here too. The term tzimtzum refers to the word withdrawal, living to make space for further development. Living to make space for further, I think development would be the right word, but maybe further evolution, maybe it could be also like this scientific word. And that's an interesting part. So as the Or Ein Sof, the divine light, started living the space, it's interesting to note, it created a certain space. Within that space, more creation would come. That space that it built would the best be represented by the shape of the circle. I will explain later on why it takes the shape of a circle, but that's interesting to note. Those of you, again, in the NeuroGraphic method, you understand it. The circle is the very first shape we always deal with. The circle is the basic shape of human life. It's the original shape, it's the beginning, right? And that's interesting to note. The importance, the allegory of the circle actually has here in the Kabbalistic study as well. The circle, when the divine light started living, it started living, basically, this is the idea, that there is a light, okay? I'm gonna put that pencil, okay? There is a center right here, and from the center, from the dot, the divine light started living in all directions in equal amount. And that's where, right, it started living like this, right? Slowly by slowly, like light. And that's where, by the way, the idea of the Big Bang theory comes, that it was like, boom, it was like a blow up, right? And that's the idea that the light was created and it started living, right? It left in all directions at the same time. And that's what created the shape of the circle. So it's interesting to note, again, bringing the allegory of the sun, the light of the sun. Remember, if there is a lot of light heat from it, then everything will be burned. But if there is not enough light or heat, then everything will freeze. That's why everything, the light had to descend to withdraw at the same time in all directions. And that's how the space was formed, and it was formed in the shape of the circle. Okay, this dot is called the central point. Okay, and that's an interesting part. Okay, so this is interesting to know. This is the central point. This is the boundaries of the world that was created. Outside of the boundaries, over here is the divine light. Inside, okay, the divine light is right here outside. This is the boundaries that were created by Tzimtzum, the withdrawal, and over here is central point. Should write it here. We're gonna need the top part. Central point is the bottom. Okay, this is the central point, the center of the circle. Okay, and it's interesting to note what fills up this area, this created world. It's interesting, something called, in Hebrew, it's called avir. And it comes here. I want to show you this in Hebrew. Okay, let me take a black marker, everyone. That would be better for me to explain this to you, okay? So remember, the divine light is called Or, Ein, Sof, okay? So it's interesting to start noting that the word or, which means light, okay? If you add one more letter to it, right? Look, or, if you add the letter Yud, which Kabbalistically, that letter represents the spark of God, the godliness, the spark of life, okay? If we're talking about feminine and masculine, it represents the masculine energy, the semen, okay? The sperm, so to say, okay? So the word avir in Hebrew means air, okay? And this world was filled with air. The metaphorical understanding of the air means the very light reflection of the original divine light. Okay, the same divine light that we refer to here, right? Outside existed divine light, right? But inside the world that was created now by withdrawal, by Tzimtzum, came something we call Avir. Avir is this reflection of this infinite light. This is a reflection that's very, very light. It's so light that it's invisible. We can't see the light. But it's necessary for us to sustain our life. And that is the definition of air, right? We don't see air, but we know it's important. It's necessary for humans to exist because we live by inhaling air, right? And that's the interesting part to understanding, right? The properties, again, so it's important to know that Kabbalistically, air represents a very, very, very light reflection of the original divine light. And that's a metaphorical understanding that even though the divine light, which we refer to as an attribute of God, even though God kind of withdrew to create space for the creation of the world, the God nonetheless stayed in the form of air to provide what? To provide life, to provide support, to provide resource to humans to exist in this world. And that will be the end of this session. If you want to register for the course, welcome to join me at my website, NeuroGraphica USA.com.